This project is is a commission for a private home. I'm trying to figure out these are initial sketches, and they've given me a cast of characters. They're horoscope figures from an Asian horoscope, one for each family member, done in this Haida manga style, as I've come to being called. It's a this would be the rooster, and the idea here is to take sort of some of the familiar elements of North Coast Pacific, on the eastern shores of the Pacific. Haida Gwaii, we're known for a lot of things, particularly a reputation as being rather interested in the arts. We have quite a strong practice of creating very interesting cultural material, I suppose. A language of sorts, a poetic language of forms, shapes. A deal, I think, with an interesting way of looking at life, and it's much, I think, it's much much informed by the strength of the world that we live in, the natural world, this strip of rocks and sand and muskeg hemmed in by some of the most ferocious winds, extreme tidal patterns, more earthquakes than anywhere else in North America. It's quite an active and powerful place. And so in our work we play with notions of expansion and compression. There's this dance going on, there's constant movement, and we find our place inside, in that tide, in that current, moving with it, always trying to move with it, not placing ourselves in conflict with it, because that's an unnecessary expenditure of energy, and dancing with the world. And so that dance has evolved into this graphic form. And so, hence the rooster, informed by some of the basic elements of classic Haida iconography. And I feel, as a person of hybrid ancestry, something that I celebrate and embrace. I feel that my little adventure here includes presenting a different way to work with the classic form, to create work that is emotionally accessible to those people who don't understand some of the basic principles of this classic form, because there are rules. There are, very limited but powerful set of understandings that allow a person to make a totem pole that works, for instance. Stepping off camera for a moment, pull an example. Examples. So here's an example of the classic form. This is a teaching tool that one of my teachers had created many years ago when we were learning the form. And it's a beautiful sculptural piece. It expands here and then it compresses here. It has this lovely little relationship of the negative space to the positive space, to the small little object here, this dished out part, has a huge impact on how the whole piece works. It's the preponderance of the small, the way that the whole piece requires these intimate little details to keep the dance going. It's almost like this piece is twirling around. So this is classic form. And then the Haidamanga form is to say, okay, let's play with it in ways that are accessible to everybody today. Because I feel if we increase the degree of understanding between people, we probably stand a better chance of stopping to do the horrific things that are done, continue to be done towards the other. Genocide is the word that's been used in Canada in the summer of 2019 to describe the relationship between Canada and Indigenous people. Fortunately, there is an appetite to challenge that and to make things a little friendlier than they have been. Whether that persists, I don't know. So I'm going to try and get the other character in this large painting that I have to do. And this, again, is just the study, is the rat. Beautiful rat. It's not often described as beautiful, but they're quite amazing creatures. We feel very threatened by them, so we demonize them. We poison them. I'm not saying that there's no reason that we shouldn't be cautious around them, but really, the amount of industry and attention that we put into killing these little critters is kind of strange. And we do the same with insects. I think we need to be careful about how readily we reach out and attack other creatures. That sort of attitude that, rats need to be killed, insects need to be killed, is the same type of relationship that exists amongst people, where we demonize the other. We demonize the other for whatever is fashionable, ethnicity, social class, complexion, etc., etc. This history is full, and current history, modern history, right today, is full of these divisions, these cleavages that we fill up with simplistic nonsense, and we, propelled by our fear and a sense of inadequacy, we attack the other as if that was the problem, failing to recognize that the work that needs to be done is internal work, personal work, work within a nation state, work internally to take care of one another, to support your neighbor, and if there is a cause of fear or anxiousness, deal with it, as opposed to trying to, blame someone else, and to numb ourselves to the circumstance that causes people to a mother to take her young child and walk 1,000 or 2,000 kilometers to a place that she perceives as safe. And what do? We cast her out. We deny her. We deny our sister, right? Love support and affection, because we're so wrapped up in our own fear, because we don't deal with it. It's terrible. That assault on the other, whether it be a rat or an insect or a human, is the sickness, and climate change is the symptom of that sickness. The attack on biocultural diversity is the reason why we are in the predicament that we're in now. And if we don't figure out how to recover some sense of social cohesion or species cohesion internally, as well as our relationship to rats and insects and all these things, I think we're in for a real rough ride. There's lots of reason for despair. Despair is a motivating force, I think, that opens up a space for hope and reaction and movement and engagement. And one of the engagements that would be appropriate is for people to become engaged in their own community and not to leave it up to some specialized agency. Oh, it's a matter for the police. It's a matter for the courts. There's a law that somebody is supposed to be implementing. There's somebody else responsible. There's a physician to help that situation. Those things are supposed to be additive. They're not supposed to exclude us from becoming engaged. And that lack of engagement, that lack of concern is inappropriate. Yeah. I think. But then I don't know. All I know is I don't know much. Like this rat. It doesn't look like a rat to me. Okay, so that's just a sketch that might look like a rat. But I need it not to look like a rat. I need it to look like my interpretation of a rat. You cut that part out. That sounds stupid. Right. I don't think that makes sense. Anyways, so I'm going to try and... It's too much like a rat. So this is the rotational approach. To take the object, say, well, this is the horizon. This is the dominant horizon. This is how this is supposed to be seen. And then to rotate it so that we don't see it in the way that we typically would see it. We see something else and we go to work on it. So what else do we see? Look at this here. This is your basic element here, the ovoid, the internal structure, the external structure. It would go through like this, and it will define this weight here. From here we'll create the tension, and then we'll play with that tension and spin something off. Maybe we'll put a little form like that in there, and here I'll spin it out, pull it back. But I think I'll put a little U shape in there. I just love U shapes. There's one fine artist at home. I think he has a shop where he sells his work. It's called It's All About You. I love the U shape. Okay. Now, so there's some basic sort of classic Haida design elements there. And what does that do to our rat? Oh, yeah, the rat's still there, but something else is starting to develop here. I can flip it back. Let me take that ovoid and put an eye in there. And let's take that space and break it up by putting in a nose element. And suddenly, because it's a nose element, Change this weight a little bit. This is all just really preliminary. There's a lot going to happen. Many, many days here. But I put teeth in there. Rodent teeth. So that's a rodent teeth. I probably need to... I'll come back and work on that. But anyways, let's sort of see what's happening. So it's becoming too defined here. I'm starting to see stuff say, okay, well, this obviously is an eye, so that needs teeth, and then it's becoming very, a narrative that I'm driving, and of course I take full responsibility for the artwork that I'm doing, but it's also fun to get out of that place and just see what other adventures are all, to take the road untraveled and just to see what do we end up with when we do twist it around. So I don't see that so much anymore, and so something else will happen here. And indeed it will. Okay, so again, it's another kind of face element popping up there, and it's sort of, it's a nice piece. I'll give this depth later so that I'm going to try and get the form. I'm not sure if I'll bulge it out and then curve it around, or whether I'll take it in like this. I'm not sure. Don't know that yet. But anyways, it's starting to reveal itself. So let's play with it and twist it around again. Try this way. Okay, now, so something totally different is happening here. I think it's still the rat. It will end up being the rat eventually. But it's a way to lose control, perhaps. Just to look at the potential of what these elements could become if I confuse myself. So I don't need to pretend to be a little god, the master, the whatever. That, as I was saying, we rely on the courts to deliver justice. Well, courts aren't about justice. Courts are about law. Law based on justice, one would hope. And, I think mostly we aspire to that. But that's a specializing role. The role of judges, or the role of police, or the role of physicians, or the role of teachers. So we say, okay, it's your area of specialization. You must know all the answers. You must be like a little god. And then therefore, if you're a little god, I'm not. Right? I'm a supplicant in this elite, this hierarchy structure that we have in human society. The alpha will lead and we will follow. It's helpful in many situations, I don't deny that. But also, I don't think it works as a model for living. It's, again, people need to be responsible for themselves and realize you come in the world, you have an obligation to use your oxygen wisely. There's moral obligations. We're social creatures, and the relationships we have to other people is really critical, and it can't be diminished, it can't be given away. We're born with it, we die with it. So we need to think, I think we need to think humbly of ourselves, and to be less arrogant and less sure of what we see, and to look at things with question, to look at things with question and honestly try to perceive some kind of answer, I suppose, or to listen to some kind of oppositional voice. It's difficult. Oh, it's so difficult to listen, as opposed to rise to the challenge, to have that discussion, that debate, that attack, that judgment. If we can just step back and just be more childlike and just like be amazed by what's going on, then that's what this is about. It's to step away from certainty and to relish that, what I call up, the undiluted potential, UP, is that the trust that the world is filled with angels. There are more angels than devils, to use a Christian analogy. And so I don't mind twisting things around. Something is going to happen, and it's going to be great in some way. So this is why I'm twisting stuff around. What is revealed when I step away from my certainty that I'm drawing a rat? What do we end up with? I'm not sure. I love the intimacy of working with this material, this paper, this plant. All right, and these little bit of mineral there, the graphite. I'm not very interested in working digitally. I think for an economic reason, it's I'm not sure how that even works out. I love the idea of creating an original, an object I can touch, feel, taste, dance with. Split U. That's what this is. We have other terms that young language students are figuring it out at home right now. Descriptive terms for these elements. They're excavating them, and where we don't know, we're recreating. I like to call the basic structure, which is, it's here. It's the frame line. You may hear people talk about the form line to describe the sort of overall matrix that these smaller elements fit inside. So the frame line would be here, whoosh, right? Something like that. Right, it's this large place, and then we fit smaller elements inside of it. I like to call it the frame line because it then suggests that we're looking through a structure, that the structure contains things. A frame, a door frame, is a passageway. A window frame allows us to see through it. It's about movement. It's about it doesn't really describe what's inside of it, but says here's the potential of what's here. And if we call it a form line, I think it suggests to me that we understand the form. We can see the entirety of the person, of the object. And because we see the entirety, we see the form, we have authority over it, and that we can describe what it is because we know it to such a degree. And again, I think it lends us to become arrogant, perhaps, but even it also just suggests something static. It's like, okay, once you understand it, fine, let's go on to something else. We got it figured out. The frame line says, no, this is a verb. Art is a verb. It's an ongoing process. It's like, it's active. It continues. It is full of potential. So, I didn't really start off with a frame line approach because I think it's in my head. So I sort of leapt ahead. I took a shortcut. Okay, back to here. This is actually looking more shrew-like to me than rat-like. These lovely ears they have. A little fold, I think. There's a character in this part of the world, which is a mouse. Now, a mouse is a little bit different than a rat, but sisters and brothers, I suppose. I like the little mouse character because it's small but powerfully portrayed. And again, I think it's the power of these little parts, these little minor elements that float in a larger structure. But gosh, we can change the whole piece by that little dot, that eye suddenly up there. Gives it a whole emotional characteristic that is quite different than that or that. The success of the large element requires a harmony with the small elements, just the way that a nation state works best if it takes care of all its small parts. Homeless people, minorities, people that don't fit inside the sort of stereotypical presentation of national identity. The Nazi vision of what the Aryan race was, the horrifying stupidity of this kind of arrogance template, right? This doesn't work. You need to have cultural diversity, as we need to have biological diversity. We need to have ethnic diversity. Diversity is the solution to the problems that are facing the world. So those little things are really important. And the people who are in charge of the little things are just the regular citizens. You and I. How we live our life. How are we functioning as kind-hearted people? It can offset the madness of fascism. Okay. See where that eye goes. I wish that people who are watching this film could help me, could speak, say, Michael, put the eye over there. No, not there. Obviously, I don't want to put it. Obviously, I don't have enough rats in my life. It should be really clear. Okay, not worry about it so much. Let's get those little toes in there. So I've chatted away here about what I think are some pretty serious things. And I think that this is serious, but it's playful. And that's a really critical part of this work, is making it playful. So I don't get caught up in some sort of serious, somber dance. Wow, is that the eye? Might be. That's not the ear, though. Okay. What? So these are, I'm using the sheets from a project called Carpe Fin, which is a book that's coming out in November 2019. And it's also a mural, 12 square foot mural watercolor, which is commissioned by the Seattle Art Museum and is entering their permanent collection with a great solo exhibit, which will be up for a year, 2019 to 2020, the Seattle Art Museum, of course, in Seattle. And these are the sheets of paper I was using to locate text. So this is just an overlay. It's not very good text. I mean, the text is good, but finally, but this one here, the weight is not right on this question mark. Anyways, it's good paper. I want to use the back side of it. That nose is probably not big enough. Details. Too many details. I'll get to it later. Okay. It's enough. It's enough on that one. It's enough to work with. Ah, the tail. Did somebody say the tail? Where's the tail? So probably one of the great adaptations the rat has made is that tail. Balance, propulsion, spring-loaded. Okay. Now switch it up a little bit here. And come back to this rooster. There's something unique about, there's something profoundly special about this part of the world on the north coast of the Pacific. It's the most threatened forest type on the planet, temperate rainforest. Not only did it, and continues somewhat, but much abated the impact of industrial commodification. You know, it's everything is measured by how much money can be extracted. So much of that forest was denuded, smashed. Washington, Oregon, perhaps even, I guess we would include Northern California. So in British Columbia and Alaska. But there's still elements left. And the political activity of the last 30 years has really preserved some of the, biological operations of the area, but the lack of rainfall as of late is kind of worrisome. So the area is kind of special. The power of the people, the power of the indigenous people who've survived. 200 years of attack. Wish I was another word to describe the relationship, but genocidal is the word that I think most accurately conveys much of the situation. And how sad that was too. How sad that was. Like, even to look at this approach to living gently on the earth, and to reach out and try to destroy it. It's quite sad. But anyways, he survived the world's most powerful militaristic and colonial force from Northern Europe, and still be here is quite amazing to survive. And I would say to flourish. We're tough stuff. We're strong. We're really resilient. And we have something to share. It's because I think the species needs to be resilient right now. James Lovelock, before he died, the man who did many things, important things. One of them was the Gaia theory, of to think of the planet as one entity. And one of his last lectures or interviews before he died was to say, one day the northern reaches of the Sahara Desert will be in Berlin. Now, there are people who do quite well in those situations. The Gabra, for instance, the Chablis Desert, start that over. Some people do quite well in these extreme environments, such as the Gabra of southern Ethiopia and northern Kenya. They survive and flourish, and they actually produce 40% of all the protein in Kenya with the camels and the goats and hardy creatures that are living in extreme situations. And they're very strong people. These are the people that win the long distance races all the time, right? Long-limbed, fast, resilient, strength. They will be the people that will survive the expansion of desertification to Northern Europe. They will keep the human DNA alive. And I think the fact that people in the North Pacific have survived Canadian and British assault for so long, that we have persisted, means that we have something as well. Now, do we totally understand it? Perhaps. We don't have to understand it to be carrying that capacity. Sometimes they're big mysteries. The art form may be a container for those values, for that may contain clues to resilience. We look back to past practices by artists that are no longer with us to learn, and we take those learnings and we play with it and we try to make it work in a contemporary way. I think the art form is actually critical. When you're on a ship and the ship is sinking, you start throwing things off the boat that interfere with your chances of survival. You jettison them, you cast them away. And our history with Canada required us to jettison a lot of stuff. So the stuff we kept must be really precious. It must be closer to the elements of persistence and resilience and identity. And one of the elements we kept is the art form. So the art form must be a lesson for people, even if they don't know us as a culture, as a human culture, as a Haida culture. If people don't know us as a Haida culture, they can know us through the art and access those lessons of resilience and persistence. Or not. I mean, I don't know. I'm just making this stuff up, right? I think resilience and persistence requires joy. I remember hanging around with the old uncles or grandmothers. There was a lot of laughing. I think a person could make a fairly good argument that there wasn't a whole lot of reason to laugh. Ooh, Canada. But these people, us people, we were laughing. Still do. Humor. Play. Saved our mortal souls. Joy. But I discovered that Haida humor doesn't necessarily translate well into, essentially English or British in society or Canadian society. And the thing, when I first moved down to this urban center, married my lovely wife, and there's a couple of times when I tried my Haida humor out and it didn't work, right? So it's interesting. It's just like some peoples have different ways of swearing. I guess for an Englishman, swearing would be reference to bodily functions. Perhaps for the French, it's a reference to matters of faith. Well, those things aren't in a Haida conversation. There's always exceptions, of course. I would say neither bodily functions are faith-based. Cussing would be too insulting. But in Haida, probably the best way to express your displeasure is not to listen to somebody, right? To deny them a space, to isolate them, to disregard them. There's this cursing thing. It's an old thing. You would point your hands at somebody. It's really bad. It's really, really, really serious. You do that. And you basically say, you are as important as the space between my fingers. You are nothing, right? And that is just so terrible. So persistence and resilience would be the opposite of swearing, presumably. I don't know if that even makes sense. I'm just trying to think that the relationship between people is not to deny them existence, but to understand they're part of the fingers, right? The cluster of fingers. The individuals that gather together to make this device, this tool, this mechanism that allows us to be, look at that oppositional thumb that allows us to manipulate our lives. It really depends on the unity of all these elements. Individuals creating a society. The rooster. Strutting male. Typically, I'd be doing this work with watercolors. But we're just at home, not in the big studio. Perhaps that wasn't the right adjective. It's not necessarily big, but it's very focused. This studio is a bit scattered. It's just not sure what projects will happen here. The other studio is focused in on singular big projects. This is kind of a sketching place. In the other studio, the sketches are done. It's where I did the large mural for the Seattle Art Museum. I'm doing a mural for another large institution. And I think in a couple of weeks I'll be starting one for a Berlin museum. So everything is kind of pointed, focused, lasered, table tools. So, in short, I don't have all my watercolor equipment here with me today. Now, if I was a real artist, I'd have duplicates. I wouldn't be telling you my excuses. But pencil crayons are fine. Don't need big fancy equipment. Just need a piece of paper and a pencil. And for those people saying, "Nah, I'm not an artist," well, can be if you want. Who dresses you in the morning? Does your mom still put your clothes together for you, or do you do it yourself? If you do it yourself, it's an art. The merger of colors and patterns and design. Of course you're an artist. Your life is an art. Now, if you want to be more this kind of artist, just do it every day. Just take a piece of paper and draw every day, that's all. Just doodle. Just have fun. You're on the phone, just sketching away. Get your mind out of it. Get your mind in the conversation on the phone and just let your hand go. You'd be amazed at what happens. Is relinquish control and you just let it flow. I don't know why at some point as children we're all so creative and we're just drawing and we're painting and we're creating and we're interpreting everything around us, and then something happens. And most young artists leave it. They leave that behind, and that's a bit of a tragedy, because that's something we can easily pack with us for our entire life. Of course, it's good for those artists, such as myself, that rely on the creative industry to put tea in our cups and food on the plate. I mean, if everybody was doing it, there'd probably be no market for it. So actually, maybe people shouldn't be artists. Actually, I'll take that back. Don't doodle. No. Of course you're not an artist. Just, tongue in cheek. See, I had two grandfathers. Most of us do. And one of them was a Lanas Au. Lanas Au means town mother. And it is the translation of what the English call a chief, a village chief. But a Lanas Au, it's interesting, Lanas Au meaning town mother, that the highest position that a man could aspire to in a town was to be the mother. That a male's description of the role was a feminine term. And that was because that man was expected to mother the community, to love the community like a mother loves one's children. Not to be a lord on top of the hill, not to be some sort of commander-in-chief, not to be feudal lord who says, bring me your fatted cow that I can eat well, send me your daughter for my pleasures, send me your son for my wars. Not that. But to mother the town, and not to demand the town to do things, not to dictate, but to inspire people by that leader's capacity to lead through generosity and to live a respectful life, to feed the people, to give away, to accumulate the power, the material goods that a good provider would gather, and then to give it away, and to transfer that material wealth into incorporeal wealth, the prestige and the respect of people who will willingly follow such a person, because that person has demonstrated their capacity to love and to be wise and to be generous. That's the leader. So this one grandfather, whose name is Gala, that was him. And I lived with him in the last years before his death. And then, he treated me nicely. It was good. More of a friend in many respects. And my other grandfather was a Scot, a Nicoll, from Glasgow, who immigrated here with my grandmother from Ireland, a Houston family. He was a nice man. Both my grandfathers treated me well. My Scottish grandfather introduced me to British comic books, and I thought, oh, I love that. And then one of my earliest visions was one day to have a shelf with numerous books, comic books that I had created. It's clear. They're not staple bound, but hardcover with the spine. You can sort of see the image. Just close my eyes. So having a indigenous grandfather and a settler grandfather made me realize early on that I did not have to choose between my ancestry, that I did not have to say, oh, I'm Scottish, or oh, I am Haida. I didn't have to do that that theory that there is a good and an evil, that there is a conflict between, bad guy and good guy. Not to say that there isn't an arc, a moral arc, if you will, and there is better behavior and poor behavior, not to say that, but to simply describe the world as if one is a winner and a loser seemed to me to be rather false. Having two grandfathers who were both generous with their time and their love was really an important part of me understanding that I did not need to make a choice between one another. Hence this hybridity, this departure from a classic form constrained by a singular ethnic identity and this examination of what happens when we merge. We merge and we become, we create work that is diverse. I mean, that's the intention anyways. I hope it works. Seems to be working. I mean, there's artwork of mine from the studio and some pretty prestigious collections around the world. Metropolitan in New York, the British Museum, a couple of, Seattle Art Museum, and a couple of other notable institutions. So it seems to be an appetite, and that's inspiring, because I think that as thought leaders, as those major institutions are, that it does suggest a value, an appreciation of cultural diversity, and that we don't exist in these little boxes where we can, check off the list of what constitutes a particular ethnic or national or cultural identity, that it is complex, it is vibrant, and this idea of property, exclusivity, and copyright comes to mind. And I can understand the mechanism of how that works in a monetary-based world. And I think it also introduces the notion of accountability for what we say, what we write, what we work. It supports conversations, good debate. It allows for peer review, I guess, right? For discourse, right? Defend, enhance, learn, evolve. And copyright sort of also is really false, because the world isn't copyrighted. It's about shareware. Right? The work that I'm doing here is nothing that I plucked out of my brain and created it from nothing. It's influenced by a myriad of expressions and observations and experiences, some which are clearly examined by other guys. I mean, my gosh, this is a Turner. I would not compare what I do to Turner, but obviously I'm wearing it, and we're working on yellow today. But I love the work that's been done. It's not so the influence is not just Haida, but it's it's English. Some of my close friends producing brilliant artwork. Some which is hanging around here. Some work by Simon Davies, for instance. So it's about responding, because we're social creatures. We're responding to through our relationships with other ideas, and we react and we create something new. That's shareware, right? It's acknowledging the success of one is based on the success of others, and not copyright. Copyright is in a way is oppositional to that, and but to avoid taking the position of one is good and one is bad, there is room for both of these things to work together. And it's the harmony, it's that balance, that's that sweet spot between extreme positions that we need to be in. I'm most comfortable in that space. It allows me to be a hybrid person, to be more complex, to reach larger to create a voice that goes farther and requires me to have big ears. Time to try something else out. Okay, I'll just leave that there for a while. get too carried away, and it's better to do things. Often it's better to do things in layers, just like watercolors. Build it up slowly. Get overcommitted. Well, you might regret it. Mm. Come back to that. That gives me a base. So there's lots that has to happen. This gets cut. It gets covered with I've used suntan lotion, actually. Quite nice effect. Get it in there and you start smudging the pigments, start lifting them and swirling them around. So there's a lot to go on there. And I just put the ink line on there to demonstrate something that will eventually happen to parts of the rest. And it may be that I'm just going to take a blade and cut that right off. So what do people in movie land think about that if I just cut that off? I mean, it's hard to say because of the black ink line is so dominant, but it is different. And it's easy for me to cut it off. I'm inclined to do that, actually. And the other lines, when I was laying this out, I was thinking of also, nice little touch of red with my good old pencil here. The other cut was right through here. So that this whole part, now if you remove this part here, it's interesting. This is a rooster, right? What happens though? I'll just use this to isolate that. See that? It's a dragon. Looks like a dragon. Or there's some great feathered creature with the mouth and the eyes, and so the interesting discoveries, because it didn't start off that way. It wasn't the intention to build that in there, but it should be more gentle with the original artwork, but it more, anyways, it's the adventure discovery of not having to prescribe everything so intimately, and not to have to over-engineer it. Just to let it flow. So that's interesting. I like that. And then of course what happens here is there's a whole nother face in there. Double-beaked bird. A little bit of a hat. And some hands. Or also they are rooster claws. So there's at least 3 distinct personalities in here that are merging. So let's play with that a little bit. So it's this point where the transition has occurred, is that the elements of the overall piece have revealed themselves. We'll just call that the dragon just for, and then this creature here. So at this point I'm not trying to rotate pieces around. I'm not trying to disguise pieces. such as on this piece here where I was trying to develop it and I was playing around and moving it, and oh my goodness, I see something here. Originally I saw this little face here, and then I saw this face here, and now I see this as a bird-like creature. Could easily make that a rat eye and the body feathered. So this was a process of discovery, of just rotating it and playing with it and saying, what is happening here? And what do I see when I refuse to see what I refuse to project my intention, and I open myself up to some possibility that there is something hidden that will be revealed. And this is a good example, just this very minute, to suddenly see that as one unit. And it's the same, now that we've got to that point where we see them as individual units, I'm not so interested in the exploration of the narrative, but I just want to now pull those discoveries out and polish them to some sort of, sense of completion. So there was a transition that has just occurred here when I was saying, well, I'll cut it like this. And that's always comfortable because there's so much uncertainty in the beginning. It really is a faith-based practice, just to say it's a blank piece of paper and it's full of amazing adventures, and I don't have to have a picture of a rooster here and be transferring it over. And it's that playfulness, that willingness to play and to examine the widest sense of possibilities that makes this work fun. This seriousness, this serious approach is made fun because of the sense of adventure. At this point, fueled by this discovery of the dragon and these other faces, becomes more of the work part of it now, is how do we actually, pull it together. It's still fun, but it's just a slightly different moment now. And using this piece of historic ledger paper, I saw Leger's work in the Metropolitan Museum a number of years ago. Got close. I think it was called The Typographer. And I liked about that, I could see where he changed his mind. Because when I see it in a photograph in a book, it looks finished, complete, and it is. It's a very beautiful piece of work. But when I got close to it, I could see, he changed his mind there. And that was really wonderful to have that lived experience, that direct moment of discovery. And so I also discovered the quality of old paper. This one time was where all the data was kept, was on paper, and so the paper had to be high quality. It had to last many years. So low acid, high probably cotton or linen content on it. So I've got quite a collection of old papers, and this is from a 1929 ledger book for a business based in Vancouver. And so I've cut this piece out and I'm going to fit it into the final work. We'll have more elements in there of the paper, perhaps in here, perhaps part of the dragon. So I'll collage it and start layering it. And then, of course, I'll cut it. And then we'll put it onto this large 1 by 2 meter support. And along with other characters, we'll just constantly layer them, glue them on. And then I'll probably put some, I'm not sure, but, some solvent like suntan lotion, perhaps, smudger tools, maybe even a polymer, some sort of, maybe even some wax, and just continue to layer it and layer it. And so this will become, parts of it become brighter and parts of it become much darker. So there'll be this push-pull element to it to give it depth. So this is good. This is at a different point development, and this piece here, still not happy with the face, not happy with the ears, but I'm not going to overwork it right now. But this is at a stage, well, half of it's at a stage. Still needs to be done. But there's the sense of completion there, that this form, caught myself there, there is the form there, but it revealed through the frame, that this frame will persist through to the last moment. Layered, changed, colored, whatever, I'm not sure, but that will persist. This will change. This will persist. All these elements here will persist. That will be gone. Okay.